Welcome to The Explainer. We're jumping right into one of the most intense family stories you'll ever find, the tale of Joseph. But here's the thing, this isn't just about some family drama. According to the reading we're looking at today, it's actually a deep, ancient answer to maybe the biggest question of all. Why do we suffer?
So this story doesn't easy win. Nope. It starts with just stunning cruelty. You have his own brothers boiling over with hate, and they strip him of his robe. And get this, the original text uses a word that's more like skinning an animal. Then they toss him into a cistern, a pit, which is also a word for a grave. Imagine that. He's down there, screaming, begging for his life, and his brothers, they just sit down and have lunch. Chilling.
Okay, so how in the world do you get from that, this brutal, cold-blooded betrayal, to a story about God's hidden purposes? I mean, that's the central puzzle here, right? And the argument we're going to unpack is that this story is actually one of the most powerful attempts to tackle that huge problem of pain. All right, so to really get the theology here, we have to start with the family itself. We got to diagnose the sickness, What led them to this point? The source material compares this family to a volcano, like a Mount St. Helens. On the surface, they look great, right? Prosperous, successful, but underneath, there's this sickness brewing. You've got the father, Jacob, whose toxic favoritism for Joseph just poisons everything. It makes Joseph kind of arrogant, and it makes his brothers absolutely dangerously hateful. Now, in the original Hebrew, the storytelling is super minimal. They don't waste words, so when a word gets repeated, you have to pay attention. And here, the word hate shows up not once, not twice, but 3 times in just a few lines. And you can almost feel it building, right? Verse 4, they hated him. Verse 5, they hated him even more. Verse 8, more hate. This wasn't just a flash of anger, it was a slow-burning poison that was always gonna explode. Okay, but this is where the perspective completely shifts. Because while the brothers are busy acting on all their ugly human malice, the argument is that something else, something much bigger and hidden, is at play. And this is such a key point. In this whole part of the story, God is totally silent. Like, no booming voices from the clouds, no parting of the seas, nothing. He's completely off stage. And yet the theological claim is that he's the one directing every little coincidence. The brothers just happening to move camp, Joseph just happening to run into a stranger who points him in the right direction. It all feels so random, but if even one of those accidents had gone differently, the whole story falls apart. The family and the nation they would become would have just starved to death later on. So what in the world is God up to here? Well, there's this really important Greek word that gets to the heart of it, paideia. Now, don't think punishment. Think more like nurturing discipline, or maybe even intensive parenting. It's this idea that God uses everything in your life, the good stuff and the really painful stuff, to shape you, to make you more mature, to help you break out of your worst patterns. And the key difference here is the motive. See, retribution is all about payback. It's justice. You did this, so you deserve that. But paideia, the argument is that it's driven entirely by love. The goal isn't to make you suffer for what you did. It's to lovingly bring about change, to restore you, to heal you. It's for your good, even when it feels awful. Fast forward years later, this whole process of paideia is still going on, only now the tables have completely turned. Joseph is basically the prime minister of Egypt, and who shows up at his door starving? His brothers. And now Joseph himself becomes the instrument of their, let's call it, education. And how does he do it? Well, one writer describes his method with this amazing metaphor. It's not just pure grace, and it's not just harsh justice. It's a carefully balanced mix of what he calls sun and frost. So what does that even mean, sun and frost? Well, the sun is the grace part. He gives them food, he cries for them behind the scenes. You can tell he loves them and wants to reconnect. But then comes the frost. That's the truth. He's harsh with them. He accuses them of being spies. He puts them in a tough spot that forces them to actually face what they did all those years ago. The argument is that it's this combination, this tension between grace and truth that actually makes real change possible. And it all leads to this climax, which is just
A stroke of genius. Joseph has his special silver cup planted in the bag of the youngest brother, Benjamin, the new favorite son. Then he threatens to make Benjamin his slave. You see what he's doing? He is masterfully recreating the scene of the original crime. He puts them right back in that same moral dilemma. Are you going to abandon another favored brother just to save yourselves? And this is the moment. The breakthrough. Judah, the same brother who came up with the idea to sell Joseph in the first place, he steps up, and he offers himself as a slave in Benjamin's place. Think about that. Instead of sacrificing his brother to save himself, he offers to sacrifice himself to save his brother. It's a total reversal. And in that one act of selfless love, Joseph sees it. He knows. Their hearts are finally, truly changed. So that brings us to the final emotional confrontation. This is where Joseph lays it all out, and we see the incredible perspective he's gained after everything he's been through. So years go by, and their father Jacob dies. And the brothers? They completely freak out. They're terrified. They think, okay, Dad was the only thing holding him back. Now we're going to get it. They're bracing for payback, for the retribution they absolutely know they have coming. But Joseph's response is just wow. It's this amazing threefold reply that shows where his heart is. First, he steps away from the judge's seat. He says, "Am I in the place of God?" He refuses to play God. Second, he looks at the situation from God's perspective, seeing a bigger purpose in all of it. And third, he mirrors God's love. Instead of revenge, he promises to provide for them. He repays their evil with proactive care. And this right here, this is basically the thesis statement of the whole story, according to this reading. Joseph doesn't sugarcoat it. He looks them in the eye and says, yeah, you intended to harm me. He doesn't let them off the hook for their evil. But then he puts this other layer right on top of it. But God intended it for good. He manages to hold both truths at the same time. Your human evil was real, and God's sovereign plan was also real, and ultimately God's plan won. So in the end, the argument is that this isn't just a one-off story about Joseph and his messed-up family. It's meant to be seen as a pattern, a template, something that points forward to an even bigger story of grace. And the parallels that are drawn are pretty striking. I mean, think about it. Joseph is rejected by his own people, his brothers. He's sold for a handful of silver. And through his suffering, which, by the way, he did not choose, he ends up saving his family from starvation. Well, this theological reading sees that as a direct foreshadowing of Jesus, who was also rejected by his own, also betrayed for silver, and who, through his voluntary suffering, is presented as the savior of the world. So what's the ultimate takeaway here? It's that the big claim of Christianity isn't that following God means you get a pain-free life. Not at all. The radical claim is that God himself enters into our pain. He doesn't just watch from a distance, he gets down in the pit with us. And that leaves us with one final, pretty challenging question to think about. This whole way of looking at things reframes pain, doesn't it? It's not just a random, meaningless obstacle. It could be a vehicle. So it makes you wonder, if you were to look at the hardships in your own life, not as obstacles, but as vehicles, where might they be taking you?